I recently read, to me, a very moving and interesting article, study, in the New York Times, the American newspaper. It's called A City's Experiment in Black Capitalism. And it traces the development in Rochester, New York, of efforts, I'm going to say, lots of goodwill in trying to use capitalism, business, to create wealth for African American families in the city of Rochester. And without going into sort of all the background of the disadvantages that black families, African American families, have had to deal with in this country since slavery and segregation and other kinds of things, it didn't work. A lot of money was put into it, a lot of goodwill, but something happened and there wasn't this sort of spontaneous growth of capitalism, which Adam Smith promised in his famous book, An Inquiry into the Origins of the Wealth of Nations, for these black families in Rochester. And the question, which I feel needs to be asked, is why not? I also feel we Americans, we don't have much of an answer for that, for this particular part of our people, the African Americans. And to some extent, I think it's the same problem we have with poverty around the world in other countries. How does a people, how does a family, how does a group, how does a country get out of poverty? There's an old sort of joke that people used to say about, if you want to have golden eggs, first thing you got to do is catch the goose. But the problem with getting out of poverty, particularly for African Americans in my country today, what's the goose? Where is the goose? How do you catch it? And is it, and here we have a debate going on, is it capitalism? I would think maybe the majority of people here in this country think that past difficulties need to be offset with present compassion, concern, and assistance. Starting a company which they did in Rochester, which two big companies, Xerox and Kodak, in the old days, they bought all the product from, well, most of the product. Well, what happened was when Xerox and Kodak failed, because they didn't keep up with changes, the small company, their vendor, also failed. And the 500 jobs it had for inner city African Americans disappeared. So there are a lot of people who just sort of have an instinct. It's not capitalism. And quite frankly, where has capitalism really worked to serve African American families in this country? I think we at the Co-Roundtable, since we believe in the efficacy of a moral capitalism, we have an obligation to kind of think about this and see, well, what can we recommend? Who can we pull together? What can we recommend? If you really want to start a process of wealth accumulation from generation to generation, you need in particular, what a friend of mine calls sort of a microculture things of notions of parents, mothers and fathers, raising their kids to save money, to work hard, so that they can pass it on to the grandkids. These are social capital factors. These are human capital factors. They relate to the acquisition of wealth. And I think we need to be more alert and aware to social and human capital in wealth creation.